Did you know that Total Retail's sister brand, Women in Retail Leadership Circle, hosts regional one-day events? These events offer an opportunity for women executives to network, learn from each other, and improve business processes. If you want to find inspiration on how to conquer challenges in both your personal and professional lives, consider attending Women in Retail Leadership Circle's On the Road San Francisco event, taking place on Thursday, November 7th. For more information, visit ontheroad.wirlc.com.
Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello and welcome to episode 218 of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, executive editor of Total Retail. In this episode, I interview Matt Carrington, the vice president of marketing at Framebridge, a retailer of custom picture and art framing products. This episode was recorded at the eTail East Conference in Boston this past summer, and Matt and I discussed Framebridge's use of linear TV and how it fits into the brand's overall marketing strategy. So Matt, a good place to start would be for you to tell us a little bit about Framebridge.
We've been around for 5 years. Earlier this year, we opened up our first 2 retail stores, which are both based in the Washington, D.C. metro area, one in D.C., one in Bethesda, Maryland. And that has just allowed us to be able to take what we feel is an amazing level of service that we provide to our customers and put it in a local physical location. And so far, the pickup on the stores has been really exciting and provides a lot of opportunity for where we'll take the business going forward.
So we're going to talk a little bit about marketing strategy and specifically how you're using content with TV being the focus, but maybe to provide a level of a context around that, let's talk a little bit about your customers that you're trying to market to. Is there a prime target demographic that you're going after? Maybe give us a little background on the typical Framebridge customer.
Yeah. It's funny because when we launched, we really thought, okay, hey, we're going to go after the existing custom framing market and find a way to really take market share from that market. That has been that's definitely been an area where we have made what we feel is a significant impact. But what's even more surprising is that when we look at our data, we've been able to effectively move up the market entry for a whole new generation of framers. And so 5 years ago, if you were to go talk to millennials about custom framing, it's just not a category that they shopped. It's definitely something that you would start to approach as you got later into your life cycle, so into maybe your 30s or even your 40s. Home ownership, really, the stage of life is a really key indicator of when that's going to make sense. What we have seen is that we're effectively being able to start to introduce customers to the custom framing category at the age of 24, 25, and our largest customer base is going to be within that 25 to 34 segment. And it's a slightly different customer. We have like most e-commerce companies, we have sort of skewed towards an urban and suburban base. But if you think of a millennial 24 to 35 or 24 to 39, that would be an individual that is more likely to live in a city, is more likely to live in like a shared home or an apartment or a condo, is more likely to move. So they're framing things that aren't going to be large, mantelpiece, big collective works of art. It's more experiential. It's pictures from their trips, and then as they start to shift into that next phase of life where you're going to be in your 30s or 40s, you're starting to have a family, you're starting to own a home, we start to see a different type of buyer that emerges. The key thread through the history of our business that has really underwritten all of that is that it's a very digitally native customer. And so part of our retail store approach now is trying to see how we can continue to use the digital marketing tactics that we've built up to bring people into the storefront, but it's also allowing us to appeal to a whole new segment of customers that are able to come in. And that really is a customer segment that has more affiliation with the custom framing use case and probably has shopped the category before in the past.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and you're extending that customer life cycle, getting them earlier in the, which I wouldn't have, anticipated that customer starting out.
It's really funny because you might be like me. I've met a lot of people who are like that. I remember I got one thing framed when I was probably 27. I went into the frame store it was just I see a lot of live music, and it was a great. It was a series of Black Crowes posters because I used to live in San Francisco. They would do all these, and they would end their tour every year at the Fillmore, and I had 3 Black Crowes posters I wanted to get framed, and the Fillmore, they give you the posters for free, so this is sort of like a free item, but it's also invaluable, and I was quoted $400 per frame. And so at that point, I was really sort of nervous. There's a knowledge dynamic between you and the framer. I said, I don't have $1,200, so I'm just going to frame this one. It's my favorite one. And you sit there and you look at it and you have this sense of buyer's remorse. So I just said, I'll never do this again, right? And then, I probably would have stayed away from the category till where I am now, where I'm in my late 30s, approaching 40. I have a kid or 2 kids, my house, and we're starting to accumulate a lot more memories that are frame-worthy. But Framebridge comes in and they can help solve that problem because they just make it a lot more palatable for someone who'd be buying earlier in their life cycle.
Yeah, that's a great story and kind of relates to exactly the problem that Framebridge can help solve. So let's talk a little bit about content and how you're using content as a marketing vehicle at Framebridge.
Yeah, one thing that is really special about our brand in general is that element of the fact that everything that our customers frame has some sort of meaning or story behind it. And so it gives us really robust and rich depths to be able to plumb for finding content and then leveraging that content to be able to tell the story about our brand. So when we put together our TV advertising, or when we put together our email marketing, or when we put together, or when we work with influencers out in the space, it allows us to work on a couple of levels. We can make a customer introduction on an emotional level because you're telling the story about the item that this person framed. And usually that's one of the most important memories or moments or family stories that they have in their entire life. And so it really allows us to take an incredibly content-first approach to getting that touch base with the customer. And then you also have an authentic sort of segue to be able to talk about the value of Framebridge and the process, how Framebridge works, how you can shop it, because the idea of custom framing online, for someone who's not necessarily digitally native or scrubbed into the category, that doesn't, you might not be able to solve that on your own. And so we have a team that will work with our customers to look at the stories that they share with us. We reach out to them on a pretty regular basis to ask them if they framed something special and what was special about it, and then we'll look to turn that into the content that we share with our customers and that we push into our marketing channels.
Yeah. So you talked about some of the different distribution channels: email, social, TV, and you're going to speak here at e-tail later this afternoon about TV in terms of as a content distribution channel for Framebridge. So can you talk a little bit about why TV and some of the reasons you've moved into that channel?
Yeah, I'd say that there were 3 reasons, and I'll talk about this today, that we moved into it. So one is that we continue to think that it will pay large dividends for Framebridge and for our overall growth by growing brand awareness. We see a large opportunity there. The ability to, even within the traditional space where you have some larger big box players who do a variety of things. They do framing, they do crafting, they sell clothing, they work in a number of different areas. We think that we can really own the framing space, so it behooves us to be able to go out there and invest in channels that will allow us to really grow brand quickly. Secondarily, we, like a lot of D2C companies, launched ourselves low in the funnel, working primarily on Facebook. For us, it was probably 2015. We got our first little Facebook scare, where you just see the platform risk when your CPAs will increase, say, 30% over a quarter. And if you're spending 80% of your budget on Facebook at that point, that can have material impact on your business. So we look to really diversify across a number of channels, and also some because we are tending to a slightly older customer, like direct mail or like linear TV, where we knew that we could also be able to go and reach that customer where they live. Third, we want a channel We're looking for channels that will be able to explain sort of that whole range of what I just talked through, the emotional down to the value prop down to the process steps. And so visual channels are really strong for that. And TV has been something where it allows us to buy a 30-second or 60-second spot, and that gives us creatively the tapestry to be able to go tell a story about our brand. And so that has been sort of the key driver for us. And the other thing that I'll say is that on that brand front, we had built a really successful podcast program that started in 2015, went through and goes through today. But what we loved about that for a channel that we view that sits up at the top of the funnel is that we can see traction all the way through. People through tracking promo codes and being able to track purchase survey, post-purchase survey results. And we really wanted to test, can we see this with TV? Is this going to be a similar channel where we can get sort of the best of both worlds? The brand awareness that you're creating up here at the top of the funnel, and then the direct response that you're looking for down here at the very bottom.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that in terms of tracking and conversion, and that's going to come down the line here. But I wanted to touch a little bit about point number 2 that you made in terms of, because we talked about getting the customer into your life cycle earlier with the millennial, the 24-year-old,
Yep.
and getting them. Is TV, are you seeing that messaging being targeted maybe to a slightly older demographic, or do you still see that you're trying to message that millennial customer with what you're doing on television?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'd say that we built our TV creative to speak to our core customer, and one of the things that I think helps us is that we're trying to lead emotionally overall, and that can be a bit more universal. And especially I feel with when we look at what our millennial customers frame, they frame things that are related to their experience. It's a very experience-driven generation, and so first and foremost, our creative is trying to make that emotional connection, and I think that our belief is that allows us to be able to hit that wide demo that includes the millennials. It would include people like myself, where I'm in the YX divide right here. Yep. And then as we extend up market into like, let's say we're going to talk a little bit about streaming versus linear, but as we look at linear itself, which we think allows us to be able to get into those slightly older audiences that we're looking for, that's all a question of reach, right? You get huge reach to be able to push that message, and then we have other creative when we push that message that can be able to talk more on the value props that will speak to those customers. And what they care about a lot is value. Their definition of value is price for quality. And so we've tailored specific pieces of creative that perform better on linear that speak to that audience.
Are you supporting those linear TV ads with other creative and in other channels? So email, socials, kind of a.
Yeah, something that we've really had to test into. And I'll talk about this today. But we have 5 phases in the way that we've piloted TV. And first we're looking at, do we really get a lift here? What does that look like? And what's the pull-through value that we see? As we got to the middle of our overall approach in those middle pilots, really starting to look at the user journey and how that maps out through, and how we can shape it to be able to be more efficient. And so, yes, we definitely have had to construct what we call our full funnel marketing approach, using TV as the lever at the very top to create the momentum and allow that to push through to our Facebook retargeting, our other digital retargeting, and then through our email marketing, our drip campaigns and everything, to make sure it's consistent, to make sure that it's personalized as best we can to the audience that we might be going after, and ultimately to make sure that we're doing everything we can to increase conversion along the way. And that's been that's really, I think, probably been the work that has helped to cement the success of our TV program and allow us to go forward.
Yeah. So that's a great segue into the next question. I want to talk a little bit about personalization and tracking that customer. So TV is obviously a top of the funnel channel, as you mentioned. How are you kind of, and you mentioned coupon codes and promo codes. Talk a little bit about, that's traditionally been a challenge for retailers and, a lot, other industries, and that it's hard to measure the impact on the bottom line from a channel such as television. Talk a little bit about what you're doing at Framebridge to kind of tackle that challenge and follow that customer through the funnel and actually through conversion.
Yeah. I think that when you look at a D2C company like us, or any of the companies that are here, attribution is probably our greatest challenge that we have. And there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there in the market right now. I'm sure there are a number of vendors here at this show who are offering attribution solutions that are, relatively, you'll spend a lot of money to be able to set that up, and at the end of the day, you don't trust the data. And I've heard that from a lot of my peers in the space. And for us at Framebridge, it's sort of made doubly more difficult because of the fact that we're a very long purchase cycle. Most people, if you're watching TV and you see an ad for a custom framing company and you remember to yourself, oh, I have that poster for my trip upstairs under my bed in the shoebox, you're not going to pause the TV and run upstairs and go do it. You're going to make a mental note. We might need to hit you one or two more times. And ultimately, when you're in a bit more of a project-based mode, you're going to go through and you're going to be able to convert. And so we're not going to get that ultra clean, quick impulse, one-touch purchase that some lower shopping cart D2C companies are able to get. And so when we measure, we are dealing with a lot of data that accumulates over a long user journey, and we're doing our best to triangulate so that we can make the best decisions. And the other thing is that we're making different decisions. So we always say that we do attribution 3 ways. First off, we're looking at TV as a channel overall to figure out lift. And so we're able to know when on linear TV when our ads run, because we can see the spikes on our website that correlate with the timing of the ads. Yeah. And so we have worked with our agency to build out for our brand some proprietary tools that will capture those spikes in traffic, what we're able to attribute and track through to TV. But it allows us to isolate that lift. Secondarily, what we're able to do is then plug in that self-reported TV reporting into our broader in-house attribution tool, which is taking all of our channels and which is also doing correlation between some of our top of funnel channels that will have effects on our lower funnel channels, so that we can get a sense of what the shared credit would look like between TV running an ad on the top, and then maybe say 2 or 3 Facebook touches that you might need through retargeting to be able to get you on a site and ultimately convert, or landing on our site, giving us your email and getting 2 or 3 email opens that will get you to ultimately convert. And so that gives us a channel level reporting, which helps to allow us to figure out our budgeting. How much are we investing up here? How much are we investing down here? How does this manifest itself in traffic? How does this manifest itself in follow-on sales that we'd be looking to see? And that's how we operate our go-forward marketing channel mix. And then lastly, the third area that we look at is our user level attribution. So we want to be able to know, what does a TV user look like? To what we were talking about earlier. Yeah. For streaming, that looks different from a linear TV customer, but we need to know what that difference looks like, right? And so we will, through tracking those user originations and then looking at the post-purchase survey results of people who first heard about us from TV, we're able to take what we feel is a really clean cut of customers and say, these are our TV users. Based on that, we can start to build out what their first-party data looks like, how valuable are they to Framebridge, what's the lifetime value look like. We're also able to take some of that and work with some of our data partners to provide a more well-rounded look at those customer segments, get demographic information, behavioral information to know, oftentimes a linear is 2x more likely to have a family, or 2x index to have a family versus our other customers, 2x index to own a home. And so we can start to say, let's shift creative to this, let's shift our buying to this because they're probably working individuals, which means buying in the middle of the day might not be as effective. Like we might need to buy prime or we might need to buy late night. And all of that, those 3 sources help to inform the whole strategy. and allow us to make what we feel are the most informed decisions possible.
Yeah. And that leads to my final question, Matt, in terms of, we talked about attribution there and how that impacts budgeting, obviously, and what future investments the brand's making in different channels. So can you talk a little bit about kind of just the overall strategy and evaluating your marketing channels for future investments? How frequently are you looking at that data? We've talked a lot about TV, but, other channels, paid search, your paid social, whatever it may be. Can you talk a little bit about, looking ahead, what you're seeing in terms of potential areas for growth, maybe where you're going to be pulling back, and how frequently are you making those decisions?
Yeah, it's a great question, and definitely comprises, I'd say, the bulk of conversation that we have as a marketing team at Framebridge. So as far as evaluating new channels and evaluating even what our go-forward strategy is and our existing ones, it's really a question of building and always revisiting our business case. One of the benefits of being in the game for as long as we have and continually scaling is that you're always getting data on your channels. And to go back to my podcast to TV example, a lot of this data, you can look at it through an apples to apples lens to be able to help figure out, okay, do we have a strong business case to justify trying out this new channel? Or do we feel like that might be a bridge too far? In which case, we might tamp down the level of investment that we'd make because we feel it's a bit too risky. As far as our go-forward channels and the reporting, it really comes down to the overall cadence of the channel and what that looks like from day to day. Or week to week or month to month, and that makes it really hard because we have a channel like Facebook where every day I can come in and get a readout. This is what our CTRs look like. This is what our traffic to the site look like. This is the sort of the attributed sales that we got from Facebook. Oh, it's running really well right now. Well, that's your fire hose. Let's turn it up a little bit, right? But then we'll also have channels like direct mail that gets us a very valuable customer at Framebridge.
This is a longer.
Yeah, that's we can get a read on a direct mailer in about a 2-week period, but the full tail for a mailer is going to be about 3 months, and then to be able to set another one up. Like if let's say our direct mails are really overperforming and it's like, oh, we need to increase the frequency. Well, that can be a 2-month lead time, 3-month lead time to be able to drop one and market. Yeah. And it's because we make every frame that we sell. We're a company where the through line between our marketing and our operations needs to be really airtight. So direct mail can be a bit more of a challenging channel. If all of a sudden a really broad distribution drops and creates a huge peak, well, now our operations team is feeling the heat, right? And so we're always trying to do this balancing act to figure out, okay, what's what's the immediate signal that we can see from our most fungible channels, and then how are we also balancing these other channels that usually live a bit higher up in the funnel, to make sure that they are getting the proper investment and that we're able to pull out the signal for how they all coexist within our full marketing funnel. One thing I will say is that the beauty of TV and specifically streaming, which we've really started to get into over the last year, I think we turned on our first streaming buys in July of last year, is that it's a very top of funnel channel. It's very broad. You can drive a huge impression base, but it operates like a digital channel in a way. It's not day to day like Facebook, but it's week to week. And so we're able to look at signal that comes in off of programming, off of day part, off of the overall customer value, and we can shift dollars around really quickly. It drives traffic, it populates our funnel. And so, that's just always like, I feel like our team is the one-man jug band. We're always trying to do all these things across the whole marketing funnel, and getting that sense of synchronicity between those channels is really what creates that flywheel to power you through. But it's a lot of work and a lot of analysis. Yep.
Well, great. I want to take this opportunity to thank Matt Carrington of Framebridge for joining me today at eTail. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Please check out our podcast channel page, mytotalretail.com/podcast for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. But make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. Also, please take the time to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and I look forward to you joining us on the next episode of Total Retail Talks.
To hear from inspiring women in retail, register for Women in Retail Leadership Circle's On the Road event taking place in San Francisco on Thursday, November 7th. Visit ontheroad.wirlc.com for more information. We hope to see you there.